this morning on YouTube and then share the links. Okay, so basically we're starting this morning with study unit 7. So last week we finished study unit 6. We looked at the basic normal distribution. And in study unit 7, we're taking this now a bit further. So in study unit 7, we will start looking at different sampling techniques. So, and specifically then at the mean and proportions. And in the next few slides or 2 slides, there's again some definitions on these two, but again, also when we get to the examples, I'll definitely show you what to look out for in the different questions, how you need to look at that. This will be focused on things like standard error that they like to ask in your assignments probably and in the exam. So when we get there, I'll just show the differences in that as well. But basically for this study unit, we need to know the difference between how to calculate the distribution for mean and then the distribution for proportion. In both of them, we are going to work again towards a Z value, like in study unit 6, and that Z value, once we calculated it, we will go to the Z tables, and then from there get a probability of something happening or not, or smaller or bigger, or one of those options. So that's why I said last time, study unit 7 is basically just a follow-up of study unit 6, because it definitely follows the same principle of needing to calculate a Z, and then from that Z you get a probability. Okay, so let's just go a bit into, let's make that just bigger for now. Or no, it's a summary. So all that I just included is some basics that you can look at for possible definition questions. So in this first slide, not a lot that we need to be aware of. It is more in the second one where you'll see that we start. I want to just show you the test statistic. Now what it became is very similar to what we had in study unit 6. The only difference now is, instead of just dividing by the standard deviation, we're dividing by the standard error. So that is the only difference that came in. And the reason why we are doing that is because we are working with samples. Okay, so the reason why we're doing that is because we're working with samples. Okay, so the only difference now is that you divide by the standard error and not by the standard deviation anymore. And then the same, so this was for the mean. So let me just add that. So this slide is all about the mean, and then the next one is all about proportion. And in proportion, we have a similar type of calculation. We'll get to it also when we get to some of those questions. But I also think what is important from this is to nearly see what is the standard error again. So those two are the two standard errors that we work with. So again, if I ask you in the test or in the assignment or in the exam about standard error, those are the two for the proportion that you can use. And again, these slides I will make available so that you have it at hand as well. And in the end of all the units, I'll send you a combined formula page in any case, so that you have that with you as well. So don't worry, in the end you will get the most important formulas to work with in any case. Okay, so let's go into what we need to do. So again, we have a set of questions and examples that will be very similar to what you will have in your assignments and in your exam paper at the end of the year. So let's look at nearly the questions, what they give us, how we can identify what we need to do. Always, and I think I've done it in most of the questions, I have included the Z table. You guys, obviously, when you get it, it will only be this question that you will see in your assignment or in your exam, and you will need to go to find the right table to work with. Okay, so let's see what we need to do. We've got a sample, we've got N, we've got a mean, got a standard deviation. Use the standard normal weight table to calculate the probability that X will be bigger than 100 of 1050. Okay, so I start off with just replacing things in the formula. So we need to work out actually what is the probability that Z will be bigger than very important where that square root goes into. So this is basically where we start off with. The formula is the one that I shared on slide 4. So now we see what we can replace in this. So let's just copy that over. X, they tell us, must be 1050, sorry. The mean is 1000. Standard deviation, they must give us, so that's 200. And N was 16. Okay, so I'm just going to simplify a bit, and then, so at the top we have a positive 50. Square root of 16 is 4, so 200 divided by 4 is 50. So basically, we need to work out the probability that Z is bigger than 1. Okay, so that is basically what we need to work out. Okay, I go to, as always, like to draw the normal distribution. In the middle is Z0. Somewhere here is Z1. We need to work out the area that is bigger. Okay, so again, if you struggling with time in the exam, you look at the question or the answers, we know that on this side is 0.5. We know this side is 0.5. So your answer here will be smaller than 0.5. So if you don't have a lot of time in the exam, you just follow the simple rules from study unit 6. Eliminate that, eliminate that, eliminate that, and you have 2 that you can pick off. And then you have a 50-50% chance of getting it right. Okay. So between those two, don't really know the answers. So let's go to the Z table. So we're looking for Z equal to 1. So let's make it Z equal to 1.1. So that, or 1.00, just that we know where to look for. Okay, so going down to 1 is 1.0. Just next to it, 1.8413. So that 0.8413 is this blue area. So we need to get the black area. So it's 1 minus 0.8413, and that gives us 0.1587, which is option 2. So you guys can see from what we did in study unit 6, a very similar process that we nearly follow when it comes to study unit 7. We identify which formula we're going to use. Then we replace the information into the formula. We get the calculated Z. From the Z, we go to the probability table to get the probability, depending on, what we're looking at. We take it as is, or we need to say, well, I need to subtract it from 1 to get the smaller area. Okay, so very similar to study unit 6. The differences that will now come in is that in certain questions, they can give you all of these things and just ask you the standard error. So just be aware of nearly what is in the question. Okay, so let's first get a check-in from everyone. Are we fine at this stage? Any questions thus far? Else we'll just look at more examples of this where there might be more complexity in it as well. Okay, cool. So let's go to the next one. Just stop me when I need to stop. Okay. So Here's another question. They ask us what is the probability. So we probably need to work out what that is. So what I'm doing, I just put this already here. I've excluded the sign so that when I read it, I will include what the sign needs to be. But for now, we know what we're gonna work with. So the distribution of weights of a large group of high school students is normally distributed with a mean of 55. Okay, so we can replace that already. Standard deviation of 5. What is the probability of weights of a large group of high school students will be more than 63? This now is interesting. So what they've done is more than. What they've done in this one is even though you'll see now suddenly there's no n, so this is nearly, if you look at this, it takes us back to study unit 6. So they don't say in here anything about a sample. So here you would have seen they talk about the sample was drawn. Here they don't talk about a sample. So here they talk about the group of students. So they don't say the grade 12s or the first years or anything like that of students. They're talking about the total group. So if the total group, that is when they're looking at the total population of the students. And if we're looking at the total population, it is study unit 6. So your N will actually, there won't be a sample. So in this instance, we can just replace it by 1 because it's a constant, because 1 will do nothing to it. Okay, so also be aware of, especially in this assignment, where it's about study unit 6 and 7, that when they don't talk about a sample, that you use the standard formula that we have seen in study unit 6. So also be aware in the exam when they talk about sample and population for these types of questions. Okay, so what we have then here is, what is that? Is 8 divided by 5. So it needs to be bigger than 8 divided by 5. Sure, it's 8 divided by 5. 1.6. So Z bigger than 1.6. So we need to get that probability. So again, if we do the normal distribution, 0 there, 1. 6, we're going to go bigger than 1.6. So that means, again, that area will be smaller than 0.5. So if I want to cancel out anything, that will be gone. That will be gone. Okay, so we go to 1.60, 1.6.60. So we're sitting again on this side with 0.9452. So to get the smaller area, 1 minus that. And that will give you the 0.0548. So this was nearly a question from study unit 6 that was just thrown in to nearly try to confuse you. Yeah, so again, just be aware of when something is in a question, a sample, and when something is talking about the larger group or population. Hey, let's go to the next one. So you can see again what we did with this question on study unit 7 and this question from study unit 6, exactly the same. So we calculated the Z, we went to the Z table to get the probability, and depending on if it's a big area or the small area, if we can use the answer or if we need to say 1 minus the answer. Okay, so the next one, normal distributed population as a mean of that, you need to work out standard error. Let's see, they give you the mean, standard deviation, and the sample. Okay, so sometimes we want to use all of them, but out of that formula that we've seen, the standard error is this part. Okay, so if you look at the standard error, it is the standard deviation, that is 12, divided by square root of a sample. So it is 12 divided of so it is 12 divided by 10, and that will be 1.2. Okay. So you can see what they've done a few other questions or other answers. Phew. So let's see, why would they have gotten to any of these? So if you used 4 at the top, yeah, see, I don't even know how they would have gotten to some of the other answers. Yeah, it's just basically if you used the same. So yeah, but standard error, you can basically just look at that bottom part. What they could have done here to confuse you guys as well is that they could have put in the mean and they could have said X is equal to 45 or something. because then sometimes one wants to follow the process how we did all of the others. And you will probably also then get an answer. So just be on the lookout when we need standard error. We only need to work out that bottom part, and that's it. We don't need to work out anything else. So you can see even when I started, I included the table, but for this question, not needed at all. Okay, so just standard error, only referring to that bottom numbers that you need to look for. Then, as always, some definitions. So let's look through them to see if there's anything in here that what you need to know and what is wrong and how to identify. So which of the following statements is incorrect? Incorrect, it's sometimes very difficult to find the incorrect one as well as correct, because it's very important to, when it's sentences, to read what's in the sentence. And I've seen it in other examples of assignments and exams that they might put half of a sentence or just leave out one or two important words that makes it different. So just be very careful in these instances. Okay, so let's look at what they're giving us. The sampling distribution of the mean will have the mean as the original population from which the samples were drawn. Okay, so that is correct. So you can see in this question, it was stated like that. A normal distribution population has a mean of 40 and a standard deviation of 12. So you could see that is what we used. So to see it in words, the sampling distribution of a mean will have a mean as the original population. Okay, truth. The standard deviation of the sampling distributions of a mean is so-called the standard error. And that, again, from a previous one we've seen is correct. Now they give you, this is the first time I see something like this nearly, where they actually ask you to work out that whole thing. So let's see what they ask you. When the population mean is 160, standard deviation of that, then work out the standard error. Okay, so just done it, but let's standard error is equal to that. Let's see, standard error, standard deviation is 25. N is 64. It is 25 divided by 8. It gives us the 3.125, which is correct. So we're still looking for the incorrect one. Okay, so this was a bit strange that you needed to do a sum within definitions. A confidence interval, so we still get to this later in the study units. A confidence interval is an estimate for which there is a specified degree of certainty that the population parameter will be an interval. Cool. Okay, so this is true, but I think this will only be part of study unit 8 when we start with that. Okay, so this is study unit 8's work, confidence interval. So you can see in this question that they also, this was nearly a combination of study unit 6 to 8. Okay, so this is nearly a combination of the free study units, which is also interesting. So in your assignments, a question like this will not happen because there they will purely focus on the study units that you need to do. But in the exam, a question like this is possible because there they can include a question nearly that spans over 2 or 3 study units. Okay, so option 4 is we only focus on option 4 in study unit 8. So this is more a question that will be in your exam and rather in an assignment. Okay, we use the t-distribution for statistical inference of a population when the population standard deviation is known. Okay, so this one is the incorrect one. We use t when it is unknown. So, but we'll get to that in the next few. So again, this is not something that I think we cover in this study unit. I think we only cover it in the next one. So again, so you can see in here was 2 questions that's not that relevant to this study unit. So you will see something like this more in the exam than in your current assignment that you guys need. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So again, just nearly the trend that we're seeing in all of these questions again. So I just want to highlight it is that we basically, like in study unit 6, follow the same rule of needing to work out the Z. We go to the tables, and here you can see, I think I put the table on the next page so that we have some space to work with. Okay, so from a random variable that is normally distributed with a population mean of 80, so we've got the population mean, we have that one, and the population standard deviation, got that. The probability that the simple random sample, so we've got n is 25, we've got that. What is the probability that sample will have a mean that is between 79 and 85? Okay, so what we're busy now here with is, and this is now on the X table, I must still convert it to Z's, is that, so there's the 80, there's the 85, there's the 79, so they want us to calculate that area. So when we look at the z's, we're going to say that we basically want to work out a z that is bigger than whatever that 79 is going to be, but that is smaller than what the 85 is going to be, or we sometimes write it as smaller than 85 and bigger than 79. Okay, so that is nearly what we need to work out. So we will need to make two calculations. So we will need to get what is the z that is bigger than the 79. The 79 minus 80 divided by, okay, so that's the one probability. And then we also need to get the other probability, 85 minus 80 divided by the 10. Okay, so we will need to find two z values, and then between those two z values, we will need to get the probability. So this is one of your more difficult questions, because here basically they test that you realize that you first need to work out the z's. You can't go and say, okay, well, 85 minus 79, get the difference of those two, and then use that as a x. So you can't do it that way. So you need to first work out the one, need to work out the second one, and then need to do something to get that area. Okay, so when we look at the 79, we get 79 minus 80. So very important, we start with a negative value. 10 divided by square root of 25. So that is 10 divided by 5, which is 2. So minus 1 divided by 2 is minus 0.5. Okay, so that's going to be the first one that we need to look at. Here it is 5 divided by the same, so 5 divided by 2 gives us 2.5. Okay, so that is why I included it here. So where z is 0, 2.5, let's just say minus, what was it, 0.5. Okay, so now we need to get this probability. Let's just, so first, okay, I've just copied the positive one. So let's first get the 2.5. So the 2.5 is that one. Okay, so this whole area is the 0.9938. So if I want this purple area, I will need to say the green area, 0.9938 minus just like to do this so that one can nicely see. So the green area minus the blue area will give you the purple area. So let's see. Minus 0.5. Okay, I don't have it here, so let's go to table. Tables will still be at the back of study unit 6. So 0.5. So we go down to negative 0.5. Then if we go across, there we see 0.305. Okay, so the blue area is 0.3085, 305. So to get the answer, we need to say the bigger area 0.9938 minus 0.3085, and that gives us an answer of 0.68. 685. Let's just look at the options. 6853. Okay, so also when we look at this, look at the 0.9938, there it is. The 0.3085, there it is. So what you will also do, and that one, let me just, shoo, okay, that one is very close to make that mistake of, oh, okay. So again, when you guys are doing the assignment and they have something like this, if you said that as the right answer, you will probably get 1 mark. If you said that's the right answer, probably get 1 mark, because that is nearly halfway to what you need to get to. So again, there's sometimes questions, how do the lecture get to 1 mark or 2 marks? So dependent on which one you select, if it's 1 or 2 that you selected, you will probably get 1 or 2 marks instead of a full marks. But this for me is nearly the most difficult of a question from study unit 6, because you need to calculate 2 of the z's, then you need to use the positive table for the one, the negative table for the other one. You need to know which ones to subtract. Yeah, so this type of question for me, if you practice this, you understand this, then studies unit 6 or 7 will be a breeze nearly, because this is the most difficult one nearly that you can get. Okay. Questions up until this point. Let's just see if there's any questions. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So what you now see is in the first part of study unit 7, when we talked about the mean, so the words that came up the whole time is we draw a normal population with mean. So you will see it in all of the normal distributed with mean, even though this was study unit 6, distributed has a mean. Will have a mean, it's mean, so in most of them population mean. So the whole time you know that we're working with the population mean. So now the second part of study unit 7 is proportions. Okay, and they will, in all of the questions, they need to tell you if you're working with a mean or if you're working with proportion. Okay, so in each of them, they will need to tell you what you're working with. Otherwise, one can make the assumption that you can just work with a mean. So they need to tell you we're working with a population mean or we're working with the sample proportion. Okay, so that is something that they need to tell you. They can't just give you numbers and then assume that you need to know what to do. Because in stats, there is always a few different ways of doing something. So they need to exactly tell you if you're working with a population mean or if you're working with a proportion. Okay, so let's look at the first question on proportion. In a binomial experiment with a sample n of 300 and the sample proportion, the standard error. Okay, so here again, standard error. They don't give you enough in any case to work out the whole thing, but let's again just put it in perspective where it's the standard error, because this is your normal Z value that you can work out with the proportions. And so where the standard error is sitting is here at the bottom of this formula. Okay, so as in the standard error of the mean that is sitting below, it's the same for the proportion. Remember again from the definitions, you can work the proportion where that is known. So then it is that formula. If it is unknown, we work with that formula. So, but it's basically we work with a P. So the standard error in this instance, 0.5, 1 minus 0.5, divided by n, which is 300, and we get the square root of that. Okay, so let's first do that. 0.5 times 0.5 divided by 300 is 0.00083. Just putting that there. So you could already see that, again, be careful, because that answer that you got, because you would probably round it off to 4, is already there. Okay. So just be careful again in the exam that when you do this, that you're not, again, in a hurry. because you pressed for time, you do your first step and you see, there's an answer, and you pick it. Okay, so just be very careful in the exam that you don't make that mistake. So it is not that yet. We need to get the square root of that. So that answer is 0,028. Let me just 0.0288. Sure. Here is somewhere a mistake. Oh no, wait. Okay, so that must be, why is that not similar? Let me just check. 0.2. Okay, so that should be the same. Okay, so I see what they've done. Shoo, okay, I'll just make a note of this and ask the lecturer, because what happened here is, so if you look at that, so what I did was I did that calculation. I think when you do that calculation and you keep your answer, it goes on like that. And then if you take the square root of that, you get that answer. But if you actually just went on to use that square root, you get that answer. So let me just, because it's not supposed to be that your answer is by those decimals off because you didn't, or that you rounded off within this. So let me, in the exam, this will not be the case. That something like this happens. So it will be that you work with the answer that was nearly on your calculator and not a rounded off number. Okay, so very important. So I'll just make sure with the lecture on this as well, because I've seen some of the exam papers and this doesn't happen in the exam. And you will not get, in this instance, another answer that is saying this. Okay, so you will not get another answer that is so close to that answer when you're working out the sample proportions and the standard errors. Okay, so I'll just make a note of this one, because it was all in the rounding off that created that small difference in the fourth decimal. Okay, but the principle stays the same. Standard error is the one that's at the bottom of that formula, the same with your, where was it, standard error in this one, standard error with your mean is the one at the bottom. So just remember the standard error calculation. And in this in these examples, they actually had standard error a lot of the time. So just be, even for your assignment as well, just be on the lookout for the standard error questions, because I think that might pop up a few times in your papers. Okay, so consider population proportion. Okay, so again, let's see. So the standard error, as you can see, I don't remember it. I'll always go back to the formula page for this. Okay, population proportion is that. Work out the standard error of a proportion for n equal to 20. So 0.68. 1 minus 0.68 is 0.32. If we divide that by the 20, so that is what we need to get. So 0.68 times 0.32 divided by 20. So that is 0.0109. And so again, just seeing that. So just again, be careful. Then if we square root that, 0.1043, and which is option 1. So again, just be careful that whatever they had underneath the square root was again an option. So again, if you answered that as the option, they probably would have given you 1 point in your assignments instead of the full 4 marks. Okay, but just be careful. I don't know in the exam, that's something we also just need to clarify. If in the exam it's also going to be like that, or if it is straight 4 points or 0 points. I'll find out for you guys. Okay, so the next one again is looking at a proportion that we're looking at. Okay, so let's see what we need to. A simple random sample then is drawn from that. Stat. Okay, so we only need to work out the Z. Okay, so we only need to work out that. Okay, so simple random sample. There's one, there's the other one. So let's see, we've got that formula. We go back to the original. And so if I look at first at the options, I'm like, okay, here's something weird. Why do they give me a positive and a negative? It can be both answered. I'm like, if I was in the exam, I would probably have said it's one of those two. It's just weird that they give you the positive and the negative of the same number. Okay, so let's look at what we have. 0.35 minus 0.4. So at the top, we are going to have a negative 0.05. At the bottom, it is going to be positive. So negative divided by positive is a negative. That's the only one that's a negative. So that would have been our answer. Okay, we're still going to work it out, but that was nearly, again, a tip that if you, because that top one is the easiest for me to first calculate. In my process, I saw that, okay, my answer in the end is going to be negative. Then if there's only one negative, that's the one I can choose. If it was positive, then I could have cancelled it out and know that I'm working with 4 other answers to be possible answers. Okay, so let's work out this calculation. So it is 0.4 times 0.6. What was in 300? So we need to work out that. So 0.4 times 0.6 divided by 300, and then the square root of that gives us 0.0283. And look how interesting that is. That was, so again, in your assignment, if that as an answer, you probably would have gotten 1 point. So what is minus 0.05 divided by 0.0283? It is minus 1.76. Right. And you have your answer as option. Yeah, now made a mistake again because I thought that one, just remember it's negative. So that is your answer, your option. Okay. So if they then ask us what's the probability that that was bigger, we can then go to the tables and look at it to find the probability. Yes, over 10.
No, thank you. Can you please just explain the difference between standard deviation and standard error?
Okay, so standard deviation. So let's just when you look at standard deviation, that basically looks at the population. So they talk about, and you'll see that in study unit 6, they talk about nearly every time the population that you have. Then if you take a sample of the population for the purposes of calculating Z and the probability around that, if we talk about sample, we assume that in that sample you might select a bit of, or they might be included some error in the sample. because it's just a sample of a bigger population. So to nearly get rid of that error that you might create in drawing that sample, we go to, and it's the statistical technique then to go from a standard deviation to include a bit of error that can be in the question, so that we go to the standard error, where we go from the normal that to work out, or say that sample that you nearly pulled from the population will build in there is some error in that, because it might be that the sample is not 100% representative of a population. So with that error that is brought in, we need to take that sample into account. Does that make sense? So this is looking at the total. This is when looking at a sample of the total, and in that sample of the total, you need to factor in that you might bring in some bias. King, does that help?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And that's why I think it's good that you asked that. That's why it's important, nearly when, where was this question? So where here they talked about the large group of students. So they never talked about a sample. Okay, so they need to tell you also that if you need to look at or work with a standard error, they need to tell you that you're working with a sample. So that's also nearly important, specifically for this assignment, where it will be study unit 6, that you basically in study unit 6 work with this. So in study unit 6, all your questions, if you need to work out a Z, is this. So there's no sample involved at all. But when you in study unit 7, they need to tell you that you're working with the sample, so that you can bring in the standard error. So if I don't mention sample, this is still then the basic that you will use. So that's why it's nearly so important, if you go through the assignment, the 3 things nearly for me that you need to look for in the assignment is that if I talk about the population, or if they exclude the word sample, then it is study unit 6. Okay. And then it basically focus on this calculation to get to all your answers for the Z and then the probability. Then we have the sample mean. so they need to tell you you're working with a sample mean, and that is then study unit 7, where we will work with, and they introduce the means or the sample size, and here you then start working with a standard error as well. And then the other one is sample proportion. And again, they need to tell you that you're working with a proportion. In the sample mean, they also need to tell you it's sample mean. And in this instance, it will then be the proportion formula. I must just get this one correct. There. Really, I think I made a mistake. It's for the whole. Okay. And this then is also your standard error. Okay, so for study unit 6, or for this assignment, this is basically the 3 things that they can test, and that they need to say the question is about. They can't just give you numbers and say you need to work out the probability, because they need to tell you if it is the population, sample mean, or sample proportion. And then the extra one that they can include in the questions is, say, work out the standard error of a sample mean, or work out the standard error of a sample proportion. Okay, so that is basically nearly what they can ask in the study unit. Obviously, they can include some definitions as well, but else that is what can be asked in the study unit. Okay, so that nearly gives you a nice summary of what can be asked, and I think that is important. But there needs to be certain words in the question that you can identify what you need to do. It's specifically for assignment 3, because you're working with 3 things that you can work out all 3 of them nearly with the same data. So yeah, I think that is just important. Okay, let's do one more, and then I also just want to look at Excel as well, that we cover a bit of that. Okay, so again, in a random sample of 85 people from a population, X is the number of left-handed people in the population, a proportion. So we know that we're working with sample proportions. The standard error for proportions is equal to. Okay, so we need to work out the standard error. So in a random sample of that, X is the number of left-handed people in the population. A proportion of that is left-handed. So it's interesting. Will we then work with, talk about in the population proportion? So go back to this one. Standard deviation called that. So they give us with P. So let's quickly see if it is. divided by five. Okay, so let's see. 0.2 times 0.8 divided by 85. See, so again, I like to give that as your first option. Then final answer is 0.04, which is this one. Okay, so again, I like to ask, they give you nearly that first answer underneath the square root. So that was now clear nearly in all of the standard deviations, or sorry, standard errors that we calculated, that one of your answers will be the one that is nearly under this square root. So just be very careful in the assignment when we ask that you don't automatically go to that as your answer. Yes, you will get 1 or 2 points, but remember to go to the next step as well. Okay. Is what we've done today, does it make sense? Will it make it easier for you when you now need to do assignment 3? I just tried to follow nearly the same steps in both study unit 6 and 7, that again I like to repeat this because it's so important for me. Is you calculate the Z, you use that Z to work out the proportion or the probability. What we've now seen in here is I simplified this now in a sense of what can be asked. But if you think about it, you have 13 questions. So if they have on study unit 6 a question on how to work out the Z, how to work out the probability of a Z, they throw in maybe one more of this, that's already 3 questions. On mean, they can ask you exactly the same Z, the probability of something. They can ask you standard error. So where you have 3, they repeat it here. So where you have 9 questions already that they've asked. Then it is to add another 2 or 3 questions. So we might have one more on each of them, including a definition question. So that is nearly how I see assignment 3 pan out, is nearly 3 or 4 questions on the population that they're looking at study unit 6, 3 or 4 questions on sample mean, and 3 or 4 questions on sample proportion. Okay. So let's also just introduce the Excel. So, and you will see that in the Excel, again, there's one for the distribution of the mean, and there's one for the proportion. So when we look at the one for the mean, these are your things that you need to put into the equation. So let's quickly get to check if I've got one that is between. Cool. So let's quickly see. Do that over. Let's see if we can quickly work with this. Okay, so I've got that normal distribution with a mean of 55, and the standard deviation of 5. Okay, so let's see, standard deviation of, sorry, this was the one. Now just, this one was the one without. I want, where was that one with the 2? This one, sorry. For that, I just want to use the correct one. Okay, so let's see. We've got a random population mean of 80. So let's put it in 80. Let's just we've done the 80, and the population standard deviation of 10. So just change it in both, depending on what we're going to work out. Probably need to change it here as well, so that we can just see which ones is important. I must actually link all of these together. That one can automatically get the view through all of them. The mean was 80. Okay, so that at least are the same. Then sample of 25. Okay, so there, if we only worked out the needed, we would have gotten. So let's just see. It's in 25. Okay, so again, so what we want to work out is actually these two. So we want to work out the area between, not any of those. But if we now needed to only work out the one that was 85, we could have included 85, and you will see it's 2.5, which was the one. And then we would have worked out, you could see the 0.9938, which was 9938, which was the one that we got. So if we only needed to work out the one side, we had that portion was there. Okay, but we now need to work out the area in between. So let's take the 85. Just to make sure which one. Okay, so obviously we need to, so that needs to be your smaller one. I'll just change it. We'll make a note of that in the, okay, so there's the one, the 79. There's the other one, the 85. Got, we've put in those inputs. The area between those 0,68525, 68525, so it will round off to that. Let's round it off to 4, that it is linked to 85 or 6853, 6853. So this was actually very easy, if I can put it that way, that there's your 79. Let's make it bold. There's your 85. Let's make it bold. So that was your 2 x's that you needed to put in. So that was your 2 x's that you put in. That was the other 3 information points. So your population mean, your standard deviation, and your n. And we, with the formulas, worked out what the area is between the two z's. So again, this is there for you to use. So this is for one with between areas. Here it was if you needed to work out the standard error. And this one was just if you needed to work out one view of. So if it was only the 2.5, there was that one that was worked out. Okay, so please decide. I'll share this again today. Which one you nearly want to work with. If you have access to Excel, if you can use it in the exam, please do. You're allowed to use it. So there's no thing of you're not allowed to use it. You are allowed to use Excel. So please, if you can, use it. So the same nearly if we have the information on the proportions, exactly the same nearly that you just basically put in the information. If you want to, there wasn't now one that we needed to do, but if you need to work out one between 2 areas, it has also been created for you. So to be honest, I haven't seen a lot of questions on proportions that are looking between 2 areas. But again, if it's needed, yeah, you can put in the values. And again, you just put in what they give you. So you don't need to calculate anything different. If they tell you it's the 2 p-values, they need to give you the population proportion. They need to give you the n. So again, all of that information you can just put into the Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so please, if you want to use Excel for study unit 6, and 7, please do. I'll share it again when I share the recording of today. And then I'll also share the PDF of both study unit 6 and 7 that we've done. And then I just need to scan my summary pages of study unit 7 like I did with all the previous study units, and then I'll send that probably tomorrow to you as well. I just need to scan it later, and then get it onto my own PC again to send to you guys. Okay, so that is study unit 7. Any questions from you? Anything that is nearly unclear? Again, did this session help you? I'll definitely send the recording as soon as possible. But did it help? Did it make sense? Cool. Okay. Okay, awesome. That's good news. So I am just, let me put off the recording. So I'm just